Shocking how much money goes to the CBC. In fact, I have the figure in front of me. Every year, the Canadian government, which by the way means you, send the CBC $1.3 billion. And despite the fact that that's literally just a huge amount of money, an incomprehensible amount of money, they managed to lose 19% of their revenue, which is, by the way, pretty shocking. And on top of that, I feel if someone gave me $1.3 billion, I could produce a television show that gets into the top 20, most watched TV shows in Canada by accident. I could do it.
Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to This Week in Canada, episode 27. My name is Roberto Wakerel Cruz. I'm back. I'm feeling healthy. I did not have coronavirus again. I'm immune, I think. I'm never going to get it. And with me, as always, is Nico Johnson. Please say hello, Nico.
Hi, guys. How are we all? I'm doing incredibly well. I've had a great week. I think Roberto's had a good week. The whole of Canada has had a good week, apart from the CBC. Who've had a pretty terrible week, isn't that right?
Yeah, so we're going to just jump right into it. There's been a lot of news this week about how ass the CBC is. Yeah. And I think everyone that watches our show probably already knows about how terribly run and how much money they hemorrhage. But we're going to get into specifics here because the first story I just want to talk about really quickly, we had a Canadian senator, Leo Housakos. It sounds Greek or something, which is cool. I'm part Greek. Leo said that the CBC is producing programming Canadian taxpayers are not watching and don't want, which is very accurate considering the CBC's programming list is garbage.
I know, it's bang on. It's shocking how much money goes to the CBC. In fact, I have the figure in front of me. Every year, the Canadian government, which by the way means you, send the CBC $1.3 billion. And despite the fact that that's literally just a huge amount of money, an incomprehensible amount of money, they managed to lose 19% of their revenue, which is, by the way, pretty shocking. And on top of that, I feel if someone gave me $1.3 billion, I could produce a television show that gets into the top 20, most watched TV shows in Canada by accident. I could do it blindfolded and I could still produce okay television shows. But have you seen what they produce? It's just total dog crap.
It's garbage. The programming list, we can put it up on the screen really quickly here. I was going through and trying to find a couple of these good shows. I think Schitt's Creek is apparently good.
Yeah, won an Oscar or something, I think.
It won Emmys or something like that. Yeah. This hour has 22 minutes. I guess that used to be good, but I haven't heard anything funny from this hour in years and years since like Rick Mercer left.
Yeah.
Everything else on there is supposed to be comedy. I think Kim's Convenience has been going for a long time. It's about like this corner shop in Toronto, which sure, tell Canadian stories, but if nobody's watching it, and let me tell you, nobody's watching it. A report this summer said that while 100% of Canadians are paying for the CBC, remember you, dear viewer, and me and Nico are paying for the CBC, only 3% of Canadians actually watch the CBC.
Yeah, low amounts of people. And what's interesting is that they do a report every year. And basically, the CBC Ombudsman, or whatever it is, the head of the CTRC Canada comes out, and they have to defend the amount of money that they're spending. And they say it, they say the same thing every single time, which is, well, we're a beacon of truth in a post-truth world. And on top of that, it's natural that our viewership was declining because it's a pandemic. But if you look at Netflix, if you look at Amazon Prime, if you look at any streaming service, they managed to do pretty well out of this pandemic, naturally, because everyone's at home. And on top of that, for being a beacon of truth, they're not that truthful. In fact, I get pretty romantic about antiquated institutions. I'm a conservative. It's what I do. I love old-fashioned institutions. I think it's good. But I look at the BBC, which, by the way, I quite like, despite being a conservative from the UK. And in the Brexit referendum and in the 2019 election, you get both sides accusing it of bias. You get a conservative accusing, the BBC of bias, and you get people who are Remainers or people who vote Labour accusing it of bias. Now, you will never find a Liberal in Canada accusing the CBC of conservative bias. Never, ever, ever. And that probably means something. It probably means that, this is so clearly a partisan organization. And it goes beyond, the fact that they just hire metropolitan university educated people. They make an effort not to empathize with a large section, in fact, probably the majority of Canadians. And, again, I defend the CBC quite a lot, although I'm doing it less and less. Because what they do, like what they did with Erin O'Toole, for instance, in the leadership race, where they just cut out a bit of the interview that attacked the CBC, it's blatant how biased it is. They're unapologetic in it.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, the CBC, they're hemorrhaging money, and they're spending money where they don't need to. I think this is the whole point that Erin O'Toole is trying to make, is that we have private news companies like Global, CTV, all these places, companies that cover local news. Yeah. They're on the ground in like Windsor, Winnipeg, Halifax, that they do the job better than CBC does. So why is CBC, with their massive budget, spending money on local news that doesn't need to be, that's already being covered by like 3 other organizations? And the other thing is that I wanted to touch on, because this kind of shocked me too, is that the Department of Heritage did a report too. This is just another example of how much money the CBC is losing. Yeah. When they lost Hockey Night in Canada in 2013 or 2015, that started a massive effect, just hemorrhaging money. So, I mean, after they lost Hockey Night in Canada, I believe they lost, $175 million annually in revenue cash. And since then, they've lost something like $2.1 billion in revenue. And that was their flagship sports program. I don't see how it turned around. And you're right, Nico. It's all a bunch of young, college educated, university educated, indoctrinated people that do the reporting. They've come after us so many times, and we're just, they're a $1 billion company. I don't know how much. we're definitely not worth as much as they are, and they're picking on little guys because even though they're worth, they're getting billions of dollars, we're still eating their lunch. It's kind of pathetic, to be honest.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think there's a place in democracy for a state broadcaster that is independent from the government, that conveys the truth about important issues of the day. I really do. But the way it goes wrong with the CBC is, firstly, they are overtly biased. I mean, it's not even a question anymore. And on top of that, they're out of touch with regular Canadians. I consume a lot of news, but when I go on the news, I always go to CTV first, because the articles they have are just more in line with the most important issues of the day. Go on the CBC website right now, and I assure you, they will have written articles probably about race, probably about racial inequality, and that will be the leading headline. It will be an interview with some no-name activist about something quite, divisive about race. Always.
Do you remember?
Go ahead.
Do you remember? It happened, I think, not that long ago, maybe a month or 2 months ago, that this rapper from Toronto, I think his name was Tory Lanez, he shot a woman named like Bad Bunny. No, that's a dude. Like Megan, some other rapper that's a lady. Anyway, that was on CBC Kids. That was on, and not only was it on CBC Kids, it was on CBC Kids the same day that Elon Musk, Tesla, sent a rocket to space.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, and you know what else? We could go on forever about this, and I think we will for a little bit, because we haven't even mentioned Rosemary Barton.
Oh my God,
who is the worst? I remember, Nico, you and we watched the results for the Conservative leadership contest, and those results were delayed by something like 5 hours. But we didn't know how long it was going to be. So me and Nico are just, having a few beers, just stuck watching Rosemary Barton cackle.
I mean, you have Althea Raj, who's, lovely. But quite frankly, Althea Raj, Rosemary Barton, Andrew Coyne, they're all left-wing. And then you have Rosemary Barton, who, again, sues the Conservative Party in the middle of an election. Where's the scales here?
Where's the ideological diversity?
Yeah.
And you know who I do like from Power and Politics? I really like Valley Kapelos, or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
She's very... Vassy, yeah, thank you. She's very nice, and I think she should get Rosemary Barton's job. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say on that.
Going back to how out of touch the CBC is, and perhaps we'll conclude this segment. I wrote an article today. You should all check it out. It's on my Twitter. And essentially, the CBC decided to award $10,000 to an author who basically wrote about Black Lives Matter. They gave him $10,000, and he's an activist, right? So that's taxpayer money going towards an activist who, by the way, gave a course for that money. He's a very charitable guy, just giving a course of his rewards to a black trans woman mutual fund, which is a bit odd, but each to their own. And the next day, he goes to Hamilton Town Hall and gets arrested for refusing to leave in like a defund the police rally. And he refused to leave, and he refused to speak to the mayor about it, who like offered to go speak to them, but they said no, because obviously it's all about making a point. I mean, this is our money. And it's, they have a duty to remain non-partisan. It's part of their mandate. And then they do things like that. I just think it is so past it. It should be scrapped, and it should be replaced by another institution. Start over again. Because I do think there is a role in our democracy for something like it, but it's just not working.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's conclude that and move on to the next one. I think we're back now, right? Nico, you ready to go?
We're back. We're ready to go.
We're back. And really quickly, I wanted to give a big thank you to our friends at SodaStream. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard about SodaStream. This is water, right? But if I put it in this machine and just kind of hold it like this, now I have carbonated water, and this thing was sent to us to the office, and I've been having so much fun. I probably drink 10 of them a day. My only criticism is that I keep having to pee. I don't know what they can do about that, but it's a fantastic product, and they sent us a few flavors, orange and lemon. Anyway, big thank you to SodaStream for this. Very slick machine, and no plug. It's just a tank of gas. It's fantastic. But enough about SodaStream, our good friends. We wanted to talk about now the deficit, and more specifically the fiscal update that was given by the first female finance minister, the deputy prime minister, the woman that does it all, Chrystia Freeland, the one and only. So for those of you who did not watch, I don't blame you. It was very boring. It was very long. And it was very self-congratulatory. It was very, a lot of smelling their own farts, which is something we're basically used to from the Trudeau Liberals at this point. But it was more than normal because going into it, I expected a fiscal update. Numbers, figures, GDP, specific plans for how we're going to get out of the record-setting debt that we're in right now. But instead, it was just a big pat on the back to themselves of the Trudeau Liberals, Chrystia Freeland, just saying how much they've done for Canada. And this doesn't come at no cost. As Pierre Poilievre pointed out directly afterwards, while Canadians were expecting paychecks, what we got instead was an extra $400 billion on the national credit card, which is astounding. I don't know. We have had more debt than this. I believe in the 90s, Canada had a debt crisis where we reached something like 65% of our GDP to debt ratio. But we're getting there now. We're at 56% with the newest announcements. And Nico, do you want to explain to the kind folks at home just how bad this is?
Yeah, well, I'll endeavour to do so. Firstly, I'm no economist, but I think I have a fairly good understanding of what's going on. Now, obviously, as a result of the pandemic, the government has gone into debt because we had to take out money which we don't have. It's as simple as that. It's a bit like, a household. If you have heating bills which you can't pay for, or if you want to buy a house, something really, really good, or a car, you'll take out debt. But what happens, and it's interesting to compare this to the same sort of household decisions you make every day, is that we have gone so overboard that our debt to GDP ratio is colossal. Now, as Roberto said, it's not quite as bad as it was in the 90s, which, by the way, Pierre Trudeau got us into, but it's certainly getting there. Now, when you hear a number, and it's $381 billion, that's the deficit. When you hear a number like that, your brain sort of goes, oof, it's difficult to comprehend, and rightly so. It's a huge figure. But what that means is that every year, because there's interest on this, right? The people who buy government debt, your pension fund probably buys government debt, corporations, other foreign governments, although not so much in Canada. The reason why they do that is because the Canadian government promises them interest. And that means that they get a bit of money, every year. The more they sit on it, we all know what interest is. But because we have to make interest payments on the $381 billion, it means every year we have to put a bit more of our funding towards servicing this debt. And the issue with that is that every single year we have to spend a significant amount of our tax money, which we collect from the tax base, obviously, towards basically nothing. Not towards, social spending, not towards building roads, not towards lamps. And the danger is that it will get so large that firstly, it will just be impossible to manage. And secondly, there's another issue here, which is really, really scary. And right now, a lot of people argue that it's okay to take out lots of money. It's called modern economic or modern monetary theory. And basically, they say it's okay to borrow lots of money because right now, interest rates are really, really low. But the issue with Canada is that we have a lot of household debt and we also have a huge debt to GDP ratio, which makes it harder every single year to justify the interest rates. Now, when interest rates go up, this becomes terrifying because it means we are spending so much money on just keeping our head above water that we can't spend money on anything else. And that's what we're approaching. Interest rates are fine now, they're fine for now, but there's no guarantee that's going to stay that way forever. And as Pierre Poilievre says, we are heading towards a cliff. Eventually, this bubble's going to burst. You can't keep this up forever. And, I love household analogies. And basically what the Trudeau government has done is, even before the pandemic, we're struggling to pay the gas bills, we're struggling to pay electricity. And then they decided to put a massive whopping hot tub in, to spice everything. And that is the whole issue with this government. They have no idea or no restraint when it comes to economics. It's all ideologically driven. And it's not going to end well.
Absolutely not. And you explained that much better than I could. Actually, I wanted to read the exact quote that Pierre Poilievre said. He later fixed it at his next press conference. But he said, "We aren't approaching the cliff or even at the edge of the cliff. We can now see the cliff. And this government is running towards it as fast as humanly possible." I'm glad he corrected that the next day because that quote actually makes no sense. We aren't approaching the cliff or even at the edge of the cliff. We can now see the cliff. And this government is running towards it as fast as humanly possible. He then later corrected it to something that made more sense, that we are teetering on the cliff or something to that effect. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone.
But I mean, he's totally right, and that's because we had a fiscal update yesterday, and then Chrystia Freeland, the first woman economics minister, who has, by the way, as much economic experience as Roberto does, basically. Or Nico. And basically, she said in that shrill, awful voice of hers that, firstly, we don't have any, plan. We don't have a date when the fiscal spending is going to stop. We're just going to keep going at it. And when we feel like it's,
we're using
got
fiscal
a bit far, I guess we'll pull it back. Whatever the hell that is.
Is that?
And she's already promised to spend another $100 billion on just getting out of the pandemic. Now, it seems fairly clear to me that there's a fairly obvious way out of the pandemic, and that's just get rid of the lockdown, you just let people go back to work, don't put the economy in hibernation. But no, that hasn't appeared as a solution to the Liberals yet, and I'm feeling a bit gloomy about it all.
And there's a kicker to this too, is that although all these plans have been plans, which is just unabashed spending, have been laid out, there isn't really a plan still for the vaccine. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I do want to congratulate your home country, the United Kingdom, because they've gotten their act together. Here's actually a quick clip I wanted to roll of just Michelle Rempel-Gardner roasting Trudeau. She says it better than I do, and then we don't have to talk about it for too long.
There will be 3 ways of vaccinating people: hospitals, vaccination centers, and in the community with GPs and pharmacists. Around 50 hospitals are on standby, and vaccination centers in venues such as conference centers or sports stadiums are being set up now. Wow. This is with regard to a COVID vaccine that's being released to the public tomorrow. I wish we could say that here in Canada. Instead, we have to congratulate our friends in the United Kingdom for getting their act together. So the question is this: when will the Prime Minister give that exact same information to Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, every step of the way we have relied on experts and scientists to give us recommendations on how to move forward.
Rempel Gardner basically highlighting all the problems that our country is facing with this vaccine. Trudeau put a lot of eggs in the China basket. We keep hearing him talk about Canada's expansive portfolio, how Health Canada is searching over 4 different vaccine candidates. Meanwhile, there's a good candidate. The United Kingdom is getting 40 million doses, which is 20 million people vaccinated, in a country of, I think, 65 million people. So just to finish this segment off, congrats to the UK for getting their act together, as Michelle Rempel Gardner said, and really shame on Trudeau for saying that only a majority of Canadians might be vaccinated by September. Which, God, if this lasts till September, I will kill myself.
What a beautiful transition. Remember when James said he'd make new transitions? Me too. But never mind that, eh? Well, here's another attempt to sort of, to show the CBC for what it is. I don't like the CBC much. I think we made that perfectly clear in the first segment. And again, they were working in cahoots with Justin Trudeau's government. So Justin Trudeau, his press team, they released a sort of manuscript of the conversation between Erin O'Toole, who, by the way, recently is approaching his 100th day in office, and Justin Trudeau. And basically, it showed Justin Trudeau scolding the man. But what they failed to mention is that the conversation never took place. They released the manuscript about an hour or so before Justin Trudeau was scheduled to meet with Erin O'Toole. And the CBC just put it up. They didn't ask any questions, despite the fact that I think this is on his official sort of, daily portfolio, whatever it's called. And they published it anyway. And, it's like they're working together to discredit the Conservative movement. I can really see why Conservatives are so cynical about the mainstream media in this country. I mean, you have to be. It's just more and more evidence presented again and again. And also, I think the Conservative spokesperson, who's a lovely, lovely woman called Melanie Paradis, she basically came out and said, hold on a minute. This conversation just didn't take place. I mean, it's something out of, Yes Minister, or the thick of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it hadn't happened yet. I think it came out. Well, I think you might have said it there, right? It came out an hour or two before the conversation even took place.
Yeah.
So, which basically shows that it doesn't matter what they even were gonna talk about. They already knew what they were gonna put out to the public. Once the conversation did happen, and the things that they said in the manuscript were that Conservatives were downplaying the deaths of Canadians because of COVID-19 compared to the flu. I don't really even know what they're referring to there. I think it's been pretty... Actually, I think that Conservative premiers have been generally pretty strict on lockdowns. I mean, you look at Doug Ford, he's basically destroyed the economy of Ontario to prevent people from dying. Brian Pallister won't let people buy like a dog cage because it's not an essential item. You can't go to the aisle. Jason Kenney's basically shut down the whole province. No one's particularly popular in any of those provinces, and they're doing it because they don't want people to die. I don't know really what the point of that is. Brian Pallister is the least popular premier in Canada. He's polling like 33%. After that, it's Jason Kenney at like 40%. And I think Doug Ford is actually polling at about 55%, and that's all according to Angus Reid. But the point is that what the Liberals are even saying here that they put out before the conversation even happened is not true. Besides maybe, and you know what, we haven't done an Idiot of the Week in a while, but I do want to criticize Derek Sloan for making this weird petition saying that the vaccine's not safe. Look, as long as we're not cutting corners and we just use the same vaccine as the UK, I'm sure we'll be fine. But you know what, Derek Sloan, I am getting a bit tired of your shit.
Yeah, Derek Sloan's, I don't know how you voted in the Conservative leadership contest. Even if you're Conservative, perhaps you vote for PPC, perhaps you're a Liberal and just come here for a bit of self-harm. Who knows? But Derek Sloan, I'm not too keen on him. He seems a bit weird, I'm not sure I'd want to grab a pint with Derek Sloan, And I would love to grab a pint with Peter MacKay. I think that'd be enormously funny. I'd love to grab a pint with Leslie Lewis, although I suspect she doesn't drink, big Christian. She'd probably condemn me for how many pints I was drinking. But Derek Sloan, I wouldn't really enjoy that, would you?
Well, that was actually a pretty jam-packed episode. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a longer one, but as long as the people at home are enjoying it, I have no problem with a bit of a longer episode. Do you, Nico?
No, if you guys like it, let us know. I know, are we a staple of your week? Do you set 30 minutes aside, every Friday to listen to us? Probably don't, right? You probably just catch us, when you're a bit bored. But that's okay too. We're here to improve the quality of your life at the end of the day.
Exactly. And if you are maybe a little tired of seeing our faces for this long, you can check out our Clips channel on YouTube. It's called This Week in Canada Clips. It's basically just the best moments of the podcast put into a nice little place where you can check us out in like 2 or 3 minutes. A little more condensed, and you go check it out. Also, we are going to be launching a shop soon. We're going to be getting some merch, Nico. It's very exciting. T-shirts.
Wow.
We're talking toques. We're talking mugs or something potentially. And this will all be available soon, but we have launched a Patreon for you to check out as well. If you want to donate to the show, this does cost money to do. We are on the clock right now, and this does take about an hour and a half of our day every week. So please check that out. Please give us a $2, $5, $10, whatever your pocket allows. We'd appreciate it so much. It helps us do it a lot.
And of course, email us. We love reading the emails. It's very, very touching. It's bobbyandnico@gmail.com. James, let's put that up on the screen. It's very, very flattering. I love your emails so much. I read all of them. So thank you. I really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I think that's all for this week. So see you next week. That was a very good episode 27.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.